The unveiling of the Omega Protocol. The Galactic Council, an assembly of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, convened in an emergency session. The room, usually filled with calm discussions and debates, was now a chaotic cacophony of panic and fear. Holograms flickered with red warning lights, and alarms blared through the grand hall. The reason? A species once considered primitive had just unleashed a power that could threaten the entire galaxy. Humans had unlocked the forbidden dark energy power, sealed away eons ago by an ancient race known as the Orcs. Grand Counselor Primus, a towering figure from the reptilian Draconis race, slammed his clawed fist on the obsidian podium, demanding silence. His amber eyes glowed with an intense fury as he scanned the faces of the alien representatives who had gathered. "We must uncover how the humans acquired this devastating Omega Protocol," he growled. "And more importantly, we must decide their fate before they endanger the very fabric of our existence." Light years away on Earth, Dr. Michael Reyes, a maverick xenoarchaeologist, was hunched over a pulsing obsidian cube in his lab. Sweat dripped from his brow as he studied the glowing alien glyphs etched into the cube's surface. The relic, unearthed from a remote dead world, had been a mystery to him for months. But now, as the glyphs shifted and swirled, he realized that he had unlocked something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The Omega Protocol was not just an archaeological find. It was a weapon of unimaginable power. Michael's eyes remained locked on the cube as its eerie light cast long shadows across the room. He reached out, mesmerized by its pulsating energy, when suddenly the lab door exploded inward. Shards of metal flew through the air as a strike team of reptilian Draconis warriors stormed inside, plasma rifles raised. Dr. Michael Reyes, the lead warrior, Commander Orcs, barked, his voice a guttural growl. "Surrender the Omega Protocol cube immediately. By order of the Galactic Council, you are under arrest for unlocking forbidden technology." Michael's heart raced as he clutched the cube to his chest. He knew that if the Draconis took it, humanity would be doomed. His eyes darted to a seemingly innocuous button beneath his desk, a hidden teleportation device he had rigged for emergencies. "I don't know what you're talking about," Michael said, slowly edging his hand toward the switch. "This is just an archaeological find." "It's harmless! Do not take us for fools, human!" Zork snarled, narrowing his amber eyes. "We know the cube's true nature. Hand it over or face the consequences." In a split second, Michael slammed his fist on the button. A blinding flash of light engulfed the room, and the strike team recoiled, shielding their eyes. When the light faded, Michael and the cube had vanished. Disoriented, Michael stumbled as he materialized in a dimly lit underground bunker. The cube slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor. "Easy there, my boy," a familiar voice said. "That teleporter can be quite jarring." Michael looked up to see his mentor, Professor Xander Roth, standing before him. Xander's weathered face creased with concern as he helped Michael to his feet. "Professor, what's going on? How did you—" "There's no time to explain," Xander interrupted, his voice tense. "We must secure the cube. It's more dangerous than you realize." Xander led Michael deeper into the bunker, where a group of scientists huddled around a holographic display. They looked up as Michael approached, their expressions grim. "Michael, I'm afraid you've stumbled upon something far beyond our understanding," Xander said, gesturing to the display. "The Omega Protocol, as it's called, is an ancient dark energy technology capable of unraveling the very fabric of reality." Michael's eyes widened in shock. "But how? Why was it hidden on that dead world?" "The cube is just one piece of the puzzle," Xander explained. "There are 2 more components scattered across the galaxy. If all 3 are brought together, the Omega Protocol will be fully unlocked, and the consequences could be catastrophic." Back on the council station, Primus was seething with rage. He slammed his fist on the obsidian table, his claws gouging deep scratches into its surface. "You let the human escape with the cube!" he bellowed at Commander Zorks. "Your incompetence has jeopardized the safety of the entire galaxy." Zorks bowed his head, his scales flushing with shame. "Forgive me, Grand Counselor. The human had a hidden teleportation device. We were caught off guard." Primus's eyes blazed with fury. I want that human found, and I want the cube retrieved. Dispatch every elite agent we have. Scour every corner of the galaxy if you must, but we cannot let the humans acquire the other components. As Zorks left to carry out his orders, Primus turned to the other council members, his voice dripping with suspicion. This human could not have acted alone. Someone must be aiding him. Perhaps even someone within this very council. Murmurs of unease rippled through the gathered representatives, eyes darting back and forth, searching for any sign of betrayal. From this moment forward, Primus declared, "Trust no one. The humans have shown their true colors, and we must be prepared for the worst." The chase begins as Michael's spacecraft hurtled through the void of space. The engines hummed with a sense of urgency. The sleek vessel, unmarked and virtually invisible to most scanners, carved a path towards Xenos Prime, a desolate, unforgiving world where the second piece of the Omega Protocol was rumored to be hidden. Michael sat in the pilot's seat, his fingers gripping the controls tightly. The weight of the galaxy's fate pressed heavily on his shoulders. In the co-pilot seat, Professor Xander Roth studied a holographic display of the planet's surface, his brow furrowed in concentration. "There," Xander said, pointing to a series of ruins etched into the planet's crust. "Those structures match the descriptions in the ancient texts. That's where we'll find the component." Michael nodded, his eyes flicking between the display and the controls. "Let's hope we're not too late." As they approached Xenos Prime's atmosphere, a blaring alarm filled the cockpit. Michael's heart sank as he glanced at the radar. A Draconis warship was descending towards the planet's surface, its sleek form cutting through the clouds with ominous precision. "Damn it," Michael cursed under his breath. "The Galactic Council beat us here." The spacecraft shuddered as it plunged through the turbulent atmosphere, the hull groaning under the strain. Jagged rock formations loomed on either side, threatening to tear the vessel apart. "Hold on!" Michael shouted as he banked hard, narrowly avoiding a collision with a towering spire of stone. The ship touched down on a rocky plateau, kicking up a cloud of red dust. Michael and Xander quickly disembarked, checking their equipment and surveying their surroundings. The ruins of the ancient civilization stretched out before them, a maze of crumbling structures and alien architecture, weathered by eons of exposure to the harsh environment. A piercing screech echoed through the canyon, sending shivers down their spines. Michael's hand instinctively went to his blaster as a flock of winged creatures descended from the sky, their razor-sharp talons and leathery wings slicing through the air. "Stay close," Xander called out as he fired a shot, the energy blast sizzling through the air. The creatures fell one by one, their lifeless bodies crashing to the ground. With the immediate threat neutralized, Michael and Xander pressed forward, navigating the treacherous terrain. They leaped over chasms and scaled sheer rock faces, the ruins growing closer with each step. But so did the sound of approaching footsteps. Emerging from the shadows, a squad of Draconis soldiers blocked their path, weapons trained on Michael's group. At the forefront stood Dr. Zarn, a reptilian figure with cold, calculating eyes. "Dr. Reyes!" Zarn hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. "I should have known you'd be foolish enough to come here." Michael stepped forward, his hand resting on his holstered blaster. "Dr. Zarn, I can't let you take the Omega Protocol component." "You don't understand the consequences." Zarn laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. "Oh, I understand perfectly. The Omega Protocol is a weapon, Reyes, a weapon that could ensure Draconis dominance over the galaxy." "No," Michael replied, shaking his head. "It's not a weapon. It's a fail-safe created by the precursors to protect us from something far worse." Zarn's eyes narrowed, his forked tongue flicking out briefly. "The Void Devourer, yes. I know the legend. A creature from beyond our reality, hungry for the energy of stars. The precursors used the Omega Protocol to banish it, sacrificing themselves in the process. But with the power of dark energy at my command, I could control the Void Devourer. I could harness its power for the glory of the Draconis Empire." Michael's grip tightened on his blaster. "You're insane, Zarn. The Void Devourer can't be controlled. It'll consume everything in its path, including you." A fierce battle erupted as energy weapons flashed and explosions rocked the ancient ruins. Michael and his team fought their way through the Draconus forces, dodging blasts of fire and taking cover behind crumbling walls. In the chaos, Michael's eyes locked onto the second Omega Protocol component, a glowing orb pulsating with dark energy. He lunged for it, his fingers closing around the artifact, just as Zarn unleashed a barrage of blaster fire. Michael rolled to the side, the searing energy bolts missing him by inches. With the component secure, he signaled to his team, and they made a desperate break for their ship. As they blasted off from Xenos Prime, Michael stared at the pulsing orb in his hand, the haunting realization settling over him like a suffocating weight. By unlocking the Omega Protocol, they may have set in motion a chain of events that could spell doom for the entire galaxy. Light years away, in the shadows of Earth, the enigmatic figure known only as the Director watched the events unfold on a holographic display. A cold smile played across his lips as he studied the chessboard before him, each piece representing a key player in the unfolding drama. "Everything is proceeding as planned," he murmured, his voice a whisper in the darkness. "Soon, the Omega Protocol will be ours, and humanity will take its rightful place as the dominant force in the galaxy." With a flick of his wrist, he dismissed the hologram and turned to face the shadowy figures gathered around him. "Activate our moles within Reyes's team. It's time to sow the seeds of discord and sabotage the Galactic Council's efforts. The Shadow Consortium will rise and the galaxy will tremble before our might." Betrayal in the shadows, the journey back to Earth was tense. Michael sat in silence, the glowing orb of the second Omega Protocol component securely stored in a containment field. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that every move they made was part of a larger, unseen game. Professor Xander Roth, sitting beside him, could sense Michael's unease. "What's on your mind, Michael?" Xander asked, his voice calm but tinged with concern. Michael hesitated before speaking. "It's just, everything is happening too smoothly. The Draconus forces were there, but it almost feels like they were holding back. And this second component, it was almost too easy to find. I can't help but think that someone is pulling the strings, guiding us towards something we don't fully understand." Xander nodded thoughtfully. "You may be right. The Omega Protocol is a power far beyond our comprehension. There are likely forces at play that we have yet to encounter." As they approached Earth's orbit, a message crackled over the ship's communication system. "This is Earth Control to unmarked spacecraft. You are entering restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately." Michael keyed the comms. "This is Dr. Michael Reyes, xenoarchaeologist. We're returning from Xenos Prime with a high-priority artifact, requesting clearance to land." There was a brief pause before the voice returned. "You are cleared for landing, Dr. Reyes. Welcome back to Earth." The spacecraft descended smoothly through Earth's atmosphere, landing at a secluded research facility hidden deep within the Siberian wilderness. The facility was known only to a select few, a secret kept even from most government officials. As Michael and Xander disembarked, they were greeted by a small team of scientists and security personnel. At the front of the group stood Director Marcus Kane, a tall, imposing figure with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. "Dr. Reyes, Professor Roth," Kane said with a nod, his voice cold and professional. "I've been briefed on your success. The Omega Protocol component is safe, I trust?" "Yes," Michael replied, his tone guarded. "But I'm concerned about the implications of what we've found. This power. It's not something we should be tampering with lightly." Kane's lips curled into a faint smile. "You're absolutely right, Dr. Reyes. That's why we must handle it with the utmost care and secrecy. Come, we have much to discuss." As they were led through the facility, Michael couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The halls were lined with advanced technology, and every corner seemed to be under surveillance. This place was a fortress, built to keep secrets and to keep people in. They were brought to a large, sterile lab where the first Omega Protocol component, the Obsidian Cube, was already secured in a containment field. Michael carefully placed the glowing orb next to it, and the two artifacts pulsed in unison, casting an eerie light across the room. Kane studied the components with a keen interest. Remarkable, isn't it? The power these objects hold. It's almost godlike. Power like this shouldn't be in the hands of any one person, or species, Michael said, his voice firm. It's dangerous. Kane turned to face him, his expression unreadable. You're right, of course. But what if I told you that this power could be the key to humanity's survival? The Draconis Empire, the Galactic Council, they all see us as a threat. They fear our potential. With the Omega Protocol, we could ensure that humanity not only survives but thrives as the dominant force in the galaxy. Michael narrowed his eyes. That sounds more like a conquest than survival. Kane's smile didn't waver. Survival often requires difficult choices, Dr. Reyes. The question is, are you willing to make them? Before Michael could respond, an alarm blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the halls. What's happening? Xander asked, his voice tense. Kane's expression darkened. It seems we have a breach. Security, lock down the facility. No one gets in or out. The facility's security team moved swiftly, but it was clear that the breach was no ordinary intrusion. Explosions rocked the building, and Michael could hear the distinct sounds of energy weapons being fired. Dr. Reyes, Professor Roth, we need to get you to safety, Kane said, his calm demeanor slipping slightly. As they were escorted towards a secure bunker, Michael's mind raced. This was too coordinated, too precise to be a simple attack. Someone on the inside had to be working against them. Perhaps one of the moles that the director had mentioned. They reached the bunker, a heavily fortified room deep underground. The thick metal door slid shut behind them, and for a moment, there was silence. Michael turned to Kane, his suspicions growing. You knew this was going to happen, didn't you? Kane met his gaze, his expression hardening. I've been aware of the possibility. There are those who would do anything to seize the Omega Protocol's power. But I assure you, Dr. Reyes, I am not your enemy. Then who is? Xander asked, his voice edged with frustration. Before Kane could answer, the door to the bunker exploded inward, sending shards of metal and debris flying. Michael and Xander were thrown to the ground, dazed by the blast. Through the smoke and dust, a figure emerged, clad in advanced combat armor, their face obscured by a helmet. They moved with lethal precision, their weapon trained on Kane. You're coming with me, Director, the figure said, their voice modulated and distorted. Kane, to his credit, remained composed. And who might you be? The figure removed their helmet, revealing a familiar face. It was one of the scientists from Michael's team, a young woman named Dr. Lydia Voss. Her eyes were cold, calculating. You didn't really think you could keep something like the Omega Protocol hidden forever, did you? Lydia said, her tone mocking. The Shadow Consortium has been watching you for a long time, Kane. And now, it's time for you to answer for your sins. Kane's eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake, Dr. Voss. The Consortium doesn't care about humanity. They'll use the Omega Protocol to destroy us all. Lydia smiled, a chilling expression. That's where you're wrong. They'll use it to reshape the galaxy, starting with Earth. Before anyone could react, Lydia fired her weapon. The energy bolt struck Kane square in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Michael and Xander watched in shock as Lydia approached the Omega Protocol components, her expression one of triumph. It's over, Dr. Reyes, Lydia said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. The Shadow Consortium will rise, and the galaxy will tremble. But as she reached out to touch the glowing orb, something unexpected happened. The Omega Protocol components began to pulsate wildly, their dark energy growing unstable. Lydia's smile faltered as the orb emitted a blinding light. She tried to pull back, but it was too late. The energy engulfed her, and she screamed as her body was consumed by the very power she sought to control. The light faded, leaving behind nothing but silence. Michael and Xander slowly got to their feet, their eyes wide with disbelief. Kane, still alive but gravely injured, managed to speak through gritted teeth. You have to finish it Reyes, the Omega Protocol can't fall into the wrong hands. Michael nodded, determination hardening his resolve. I will. I promise. With that, Kane's eyes closed and he breathed his last. Michael turned to Xander, his mind racing. We have to secure the final component before the Shadow Consortium or anyone else can get to it. There's no turning back now. Xander nodded, his expression grim. Then let's finish what we started. As they prepared to leave the facility, Michael knew that the stakes had never been higher. The final battle for the Omega Protocol and the fate of the galaxy was about to begin. The race to the final component, Michael and Xander moved swiftly through the corridors of the facility, their minds focused on the mission ahead. They knew that time was running out. With the Shadow Consortium making their move and Lydia's betrayal fresh in their minds, the race to secure the final component of the Omega Protocol had become a desperate struggle for survival. As they exited the facility and boarded their spacecraft, Michael activated the ship's systems and plotted a course for the coordinates they had uncovered during their previous research. The final component was located on a remote and uncharted planet on the edge of the galaxy, a place where few had ever ventured. Xander strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat, his hands shaking slightly as he entered data into the ship's navigation system. This is it, Michael. If we can't secure the final component, everything we've fought for will be lost. Michael nodded, his jaw set in determination. We're not going to fail, Xander. We can't afford to. The ship's engines roared to life, and they shot into the sky, leaving the devastated facility behind. As they broke through Earth's atmosphere and into the blackness of space, the weight of their mission settled over them like a shroud. Hours passed in silence as the ship hurtled towards its destination, the stars streaking by in a blur. Michael's thoughts were a whirlwind of anxiety and anticipation. He couldn't shake the image of Lydia being consumed by the Omega Protocol's energy, her ambition and betrayal leading to her own demise. Do you think we can trust anyone now? Michael asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Xander glanced at him, his expression somber. It's hard to say. We're dealing with forces that are far beyond our control, and people are going to do whatever they can to survive, or to seize power. We have to be careful, but we also have to stay focused on the goal. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. I just don't know who to believe anymore. Even Kane, he had his own agenda. What if we're just pawns in someone else's game? Xander placed a reassuring hand on Michael's shoulder. We're doing this for the right reasons, Michael. To protect humanity, to ensure that this power doesn't fall into the wrong hands. That's what we have to hold on to. Michael nodded, finding some comfort in Xander's words. But deep down, he knew that the road ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty. They were entering the final chapter of their mission, and the outcome was anything but certain. The ship's sensors beeped, indicating that they were approaching the coordinates. Michael brought the vessel out of warp speed, and the stars returned to their normal, steady positions. In the distance, a small, desolate planet came into view. A barren, rocky world shrouded in swirling clouds of dust and debris. That's it, Xander said, pointing to the planet. The final component is down there, somewhere in the ruins of an ancient precursor civilization. If the legends are true, it's been hidden away for eons, waiting for the right moment, or the wrong one, to be found. Michael piloted the ship into the planet's atmosphere, the turbulence shaking them as they descended. The landscape below was harsh and unforgiving, a wasteland of jagged rocks and deep canyons. The ruins of an ancient city lay scattered across the surface, half buried in the sands of time. As they landed the ship on a flat plateau near the ruins, Michael and Xander prepared to disembark. They checked their equipment, ensuring that they were ready for whatever awaited them below. Remember, Michael said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. We're not the only ones looking for this component. The Shadow Consortium will stop at nothing to get their hands on it. Xander nodded. We'll have to move quickly. Let's go. They exited the ship, their boots crunching on the rocky ground. The wind howled around them, whipping up clouds of dust that obscured their vision. They moved cautiously through the ruins, their weapons at the ready. The ancient city was a haunting place, its architecture unlike anything they had ever seen. Tall, spindly towers jutted out of the ground at odd angles, their surfaces covered in strange alien symbols. The air was thick with the feeling of age and decay, as if the city itself had been forgotten by time. "This place gives me the creeps," Xander muttered, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. Michael nodded in agreement. "We need to find the central chamber. That's where the component will be." They continued deeper into the ruins, following the faint signals emitted by the Omega Protocol components they already possessed. The two components pulsed softly, their energy guiding them towards the final piece of the puzzle. As they approached the heart of the ancient city, they came across a massive stone door, its surface etched with the same alien symbols they had seen earlier. The door was partially ajar, revealing a dark passageway beyond. "This must be it," Michael said, his voice hushed with awe. The final chamber. They stepped cautiously through the doorway, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The passageway was narrow and claustrophobic, the walls lined with carvings that seemed to depict scenes of cosmic battles and the rise and fall of civilizations. At the end of the passageway, they emerged into a vast, circular chamber. The walls were lined with ancient machinery, and in the center of the room stood a pedestal upon which the final Omega Protocol component rested. The component was unlike anything they had seen before. It was a crystalline structure, shimmering with a deep inner light. As they approached, the other two components they carried began to resonate, their energy harmonizing with the crystal. "This is it," Xander whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. The final piece. But before they could reach it, a loud clattering echoed through the chamber. Michael and Xander spun around, their weapons raised, to see a group of heavily armed figures emerging from the shadows. The Shadow Consortium had arrived. The leader of the group, a tall figure clad in dark armor, stepped forward. "Dr. Reyes, Professor Roth, how kind of you to lead us right to the final component. Now, if you would be so kind as to hand over the other pieces, we can end this charade." Michael's heart pounded in his chest as he assessed the situation. They were outnumbered, and the consortium agents were heavily armed. There was no way they could fight their way out. But surrendering the Omega Protocol was not an option. The consequences were too dire. Michael made a split-second decision. "Xander, take the components and get out of here. I'll hold them off." Xander's eyes widened in shock. "Michael, no! We have to stick together! There's no time!" Michael shouted, thrusting the two components into Xander's hands. "Go! Now!" Xander hesitated, torn between his loyalty to Michael and the urgency of their mission. But the look in Michael's eyes told him that this was the only way. "Be careful," Xander said, his voice thick with emotion. Michael nodded, giving his friend a final, determined look. "Go!" Xander turned and sprinted towards the passageway, the Omega Protocol components held tightly in his grasp. The consortium agents moved to pursue him, but Michael stepped into their path, his weapon raised. "You're not going anywhere!" he growled. The leader of the consortium agents sneered. "You're outnumbered and outgunned, Dr. Reyes. Do you really think you can stop us?" Michael's eyes blazed with defiance. "I'm not going to let you destroy everything we've worked for." The leader's expression hardened. So be it. The chamber erupted into chaos as the two sides clashed. Energy weapons fired, filling the air with the smell of ozone and the sound of sizzling bolts. Michael fought with everything he had, his determination giving him strength beyond his limits. But despite his best efforts, the consortium agents began to overwhelm him. He was outnumbered, and their firepower was too great. As Michael struggled to hold them off, he knew that his time was running out. But if he could buy Xander enough time to escape with the components, then his sacrifice would be worth it. Just as the leader of the consortium raised his weapon to deliver the final blow, a brilliant flash of light filled the chamber. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the air crackled with energy. The Omega Protocol component on the pedestal began to glow, its light intensifying until it was almost blinding. The energy within it surged outward, filling the chamber with a powerful, pulsing force. The consortium agents staggered back, their weapons faltering as they tried to shield themselves from the overwhelming energy. Michael, too, felt the force of the energy, but it was not hostile. Instead, it seemed to envelop him, protecting him from harm. As the light reached its peak, the crystal shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, each shard glowing with the same brilliant light. The energy from the shards coalesced, forming a vortex of pure, raw power that swirled around the chamber. The consortium agents screamed as the vortex pulled them in, their bodies disintegrating into nothingness as they were consumed by the energy. The leader tried to fight against it, but he too was swallowed by the vortex. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the vortex vanished, leaving behind nothing but silence and the faint glimmer of the remaining shards. Michael stood in the center of the chamber, breathing heavily as he tried to comprehend what had just happened. The Omega Protocol component was gone, but the other two pieces were still intact. The energy that had saved him seemed to have dissipated, leaving only a lingering sense of peace. Xander appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Michael, what just happened?" Michael shook his head, his mind still reeling. "I don't know, Xander, but whatever it was, it's over now." Xander approached cautiously, his eyes scanning the chamber for any sign of danger. "The consortium agents, they're gone." "Yeah," Michael said, his voice hoarse. "They're gone." Xander looked at the shards of the crystal scattered across the floor. "The final component? It's destroyed?" Michael nodded slowly. "It looks like it. But the energy, it was like nothing I've ever felt before. It didn't want to destroy, it wanted to protect." Xander frowned, deep in thought. Maybe that's what the Omega Protocol was meant to do all along. Maybe it wasn't a weapon of destruction, but a force of protection. Something that could only be used when the galaxy was truly in danger. Michael stared at the shards, the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together in his mind. "You might be right, Xander. The Omega Protocol. It was never meant to be controlled by any one species. It was meant to be a safeguard, a last resort to protect the galaxy from threats like the Void Devourer." Xander nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. "Then maybe, just maybe, we've done the right thing." Michael smiled faintly. "Maybe we have." As they prepared to leave the chamber, Michael cast one last look at the shards of the crystal. The Omega Protocol had been destroyed, but its legacy would live on. A legacy of protection, unity, and the enduring spirit of those who fought to safeguard the galaxy. With that thought in mind, Michael and Xander left the ruins behind, ready to face whatever challenges the future held.